Hey there, and welcome to part one of Photoshop 1-in-1. I hope you guys enjoyed the intro section. We stumbled a little bit with opening up Bridge. I had to reinstall Photoshop because it was installing Bridge for the first time. So let's just go ahead and show you guys this file, and then you can go to Browse in Bridge, or you can look at things in Mini Bridge as well. And it's basically just going to open up what you would see similar to like your Finder window with a bit more information. Like here you can see EXIF data on your images, and as well as keyword and tag things and things like that. I recommend using Lightroom, and that's what we use primarily. So we're going to go ahead and quit Bridge, and if you want to check out Lightroom, just type in Lightroom into the search bar and learn. You'll come up with many episodes, or you can just go to the Photoshop tag category and go down to Lightroom, and then you'll see it there as well. Okay, cool. Well, let's go ahead and get into our toolbar. So in this section, we're going to be talking about our toolbar, which is right over here on the left, and some of the options here with the toolbars. And let's go ahead and get this full screen. I like viewing my images in full screen, just kind of a personal preference. To do that, you hit F, and that's going to full screen your image. There we go. Just a little bit cleaner, I think. It's a little nice and clean. Okay, well, let's go ahead and start off with our tools. So here in part one, we're going to be covering basically this first section as well as some of our options up here. Now, for a lot of these things, I'm going to have to kind of go back and forth through sections. We're not necessarily going to get into our layers until later, but we will have to create layers to start doing some things. So let's go ahead and do so. I'm going to create a new layer right over here in here layer panel, and just go to this looks like a page flip here. Click there and create a new layer. You can hit also Shift Option Command N. So we're going to start up here on the very top left. This is our tool panel. This is where, you know, the essentials of most of what's going on in Photoshop, they're going to be located right over here. And we're going to start off with our selection. So we do have selections that run in many different ways. And up here we have options for each of your tools. So let's start off with a selection. This is just going to be a rectangular marquee tool. So we can click on that, and basically how this works is just click and drag, and you make a selection, any size you want. Now, the thing about selections in Photoshop, selections are really great, they're really powerful, is you can only really affect what is inside of a selection. So if I make a selection just like this, now the only thing that I can do is going to be inside of my selection. What I mean is, let's just grab a brush tool and start painting. As I paint around my image, I'm going, you know, back and forth over here, but it's only going to allow it to show up inside of this selection. I'm on a new layer, so I can always turn this layer off and on, and selections are layer independent. So if I create another layer, I can still do that on my other layer, and it's going to stay within that selection. So you can see both of these layers are within the same selection. So as long as you have something selected in Photoshop, the only thing you're going to be able to do is edit inside of that selection. So if you ever find yourself not being able to edit for some reason, you're like trying to paint and it's just not showing up, hit Command D and that will deselect. So we'll just do that right now. Command D, deselect, and now I can paint wherever I want freely. Hooray, I can destroy my image. There we go. Let's just delete those two layers by hitting delete. So that's basically how selections work. Now, this is the most simple form of a selection. It's just like a rectangular marquee selection. It's just, you know, looks like that. Pretty nice, huh? They get a little bit more complex in how you create them and what they do, but that's basically the idea of a selection. They're gonna work the same no matter what. Now, there are some really cool tips when it comes to making some selections. Let's say I start dragging from the left on down. If I hold the Shift key, it's going to constrain my proportions to a 1-to-1. So that is going to mean, in this case, it's going to make a square. So I can just click on there and it's going to create a square. If I hold down the spacebar key, it's going to allow me to move my selection as I'm creating it. So I can move it here, maybe create a little bit smaller, say, you know what, I want to cut her out. So we'll bring it there. Maybe I want to bring it just like that. Spacebar is going to allow me to move that selection as I'm creating it. There we go. And we'll just say, you know, that, there we go. And we have her selected pretty well. So that's pretty nice. We'll hit Command D to deselect that. Now, style, you can do a fixed size as well, or a fixed ratio. So you could do like a 1-to-1 ratio or like a 1-to-4 ratio. And no matter what now, you're going to stick with that ratio. All right. You can stick with a fixed size. Sometimes this will help out with like if you're trying to resize something for the web, like we'll say 135 pixels by 64, and it's just going to be that size forever. All right, let's go back to normal here. And you can also feather your edge, which is going to make your edge a little bit softer. Let's say we feather our edge to, yeah, right about there. We make a selection. It's going to look about the same, but here when I grab my brush tool on a new layer, now it's going to allow me to, let's just zoom in by hitting Command plus a little bit, hit Command D, is a soft edge. You can see that the edge there where I painted is soft, as opposed to if I don't feather the edge, and I paint with my brush tool, like that, it's going to have a hard edge. So that's what feathering does. All right, really cool. So that's our rectangular marquee tool. Now, the really cool thing about a lot of these tools is they've nested them together. And nesting basically means that similar tools are put together in the same little menu here. If you see this arrow on the bottom right of a tool, that means it has other tools nested with it. The move tool, for instance, this tool here does not have an arrow nested under it. You don't see an arrow there, so you get this tool, that's all you get. There's not another move tool there. But for the rectangular marquee tool, if you click on that and hold, you'll see your other tools here. So you can go to elliptical marquee tool now, and you can create round selections, and you can paint in them and do whatever you want. If you hold down, let's just delete that layer and create a new one. If you hold down your shift key, you're creating circles. Look at that. Just touch out to create a circle. A circle right around your subject. Now let's say we want to, let's just going to play around. We got a circle right around our subject. We can create a single row and a single column. I really don't use these too much. So we've got a circle right around our subject. This brings us right to our next point. Let's use our brush tool and we'll paint inside that circle. But let's say we don't want to do that. Let's say we want to paint outside of that circle. Well, we have a whole selection menu up here. We go to select, and then we have all of our interesting things that we can do with selections. They're a very important part of Photoshop. So if you select everything, select all just really does that. It selects everything. Deselect will make your selection go away completely, and inverse will select the opposite. So we're going to inverse right now, and we can see instead of selecting her face, it is now selecting everything. So if I make my brush a little bit bigger and I paint white on there, it's just like, whoa, cool. Now she's the only thing in there. And deselect to hit Command D. That is not exactly very artistic or good, but it's how you invert a selection. And now you're looking right at her face, aren't you? See? There we go. Let's just delete that layer. Cool. So that is our marquee selection tool. Very, very cool. And those options are right up here at the top. Now you have a couple of other options here. Let's just grab our rectangular marquee again. And this comes with additive and subtractive. Instead of clicking on those, we're going to just use the shift key and the alter option key. So I'm going to make a selection. If I want to add to this selection, let's zoom in. I'm going to hit Command plus a couple times. If I want to add her face into this selection, I'm going to hold down the shift key. And you can see when I do, I've got a little plus right next to my crosshairs there. So shift, and then I can add to my selection by dragging new areas. And this is just going to add to the selection. So very, very useful. Sometimes we can add to our selections. If I want to subtract, hold Alt or Option, and this will subtract away selections areas from your selection. So I'm like, you know what? I don't want her selected, but I still want this very weird pattern of other stuff selected. So you can hold down Alt or Option to do that. And if you hold down Shift and Alt or Option, it basically takes just this area that you sample. Let's undo that. Just this area that you sample and makes that a selection and gets rid of everything else, which is kind of cool as well. Don't use that one as often, but had to throw it in there. Okay, so we've got our rectangular marquee. By the way, to navigate around the image, I'm using the spacebar. Spacebar key, then click and drag will allow you to navigate around your image. Very cool. So that's our marquee tool. All the tools nested in here are very similar. Just to create like a quick segment to our next tool, what we're going to do, let's grab an elliptical marquee tool, make a circle, and now we're just going to grab the brush tool, and I'm going to paint white in there. Deselect to hit Command D will deselect. Okay, so that's our selection. The next thing we're going to get to is our move tool, and this tool is really pretty handy here. I use this quite a bit. You can hit V for the move tool, or just click right there on the move tool. Okay, Now the move tool basically does that. You know what? I'm gonna hit undo for a second. I'm gonna show you guys hit undo because I accidentally put this on my background layer. And I don't want it on my background layer. I want it on a new layer so I can actually do things with it. So I'm gonna open up my history. You can go to Window, down to History, or you can just click on this little icon there. Okay, and I'm gonna go back to where it says like Brush Tool and click back there, and it's just going to go back to where I still have a selection, but I haven't brush tooled it in yet. Okay, so we're gonna go back there. I'm gonna create a new layer. See, now it's replacing the history with a new layer, and then Brush Tool, and then there it says Brush Tool. So we're on a new layer now. So if you do something and you didn't want to do that, you can just go to your history and go backward in time. All right, let's deselect by hitting Command D. So here's our move tool. We're going to spend a little bit of time with our friend the move tool. Basically, the move tool, you can click anywhere in your document and move a layer. Pretty cool. You can do constraints as well. If I hold down Shift, it'll allow me to only go left or right, up or down, or at a 45-degree angle. So that's moving while holding Shift. You can auto-select. If you choose to auto-select, you can choose either a layer or a group. Let's just choose a layer. This way, let's say I had 2 of these. Let's just duplicate, and I have these. I don't have to like now choose my layer and then decide what to move. I can just click on this one and move it, and then click on that one and move it. And see, it's changing my layer for me because it's knowing where I'm selecting. If you guys are doing like photo montages, this is like the fastest way to move things around because you don't have to actually like click on something. But for the most part, I keep this off. There is, I believe, a way to have that be on. Yeah, if you hold down the Control key, it's going to temporarily turn auto select on. So you can hold down Control, click on this, Control, click on that, and do the same thing without having to check up that checkbox up there. Okay, pretty cool. But if you don't check that out, if I move this around, you can see I'm clicking over here, but since I'm on this layer, it's not going to change my layer for me. It's just going to move that one. Okay. Now, we've got a couple of these beautiful dots here, and so far you're like, well, move tool, cool, it moves things. But what's really nice about the move tool is also all of the transforms that come along with the move tool. You can click on this show transform controls, which is going to allow you to actually like start to transform this layer. I tend to keep this off. It's a little bit more of a cleaner look. But to get to your transforms, all you have to do is hit Control or Command T, and that's going to transform your layer. Or you could just leave this on if you want. So I'm going to hit Command T, and basically it's going to bring up my transform. So now that we have our transform, we can still move it around if we want to do that, but we can do all kinds of other really great things with our move tool and the transform tool. So the transform tool is like a function of the move tool. Okay, what can we do with the transform tool? Well, you can do quite a bit. You could rotate your circle, which in this case won't do anything because it's a circle. You can squish it if you'd like to do it. Now rotating does something. There we go. You can pull your, your corners here and just size it however you'd like. There we go. Let's rotate it around back to where it's looking like a circle here. You can also change your width and your height. You can do these independently. Like if you just want to, type in a number here, a percentage or something like that, change your height, you can do that right up here. So when you're in your transform dialog, you can either grab your control points here, or you can just do it with these numbers up there. This is going to be your angle. So if I click and drag that to the right, that's going to rotate the angle. This is a horizontal and vertical shear, which you can see what that's doing. It's just giving us a little bit of a shear. Here, just give it even more so you can see. Okay, there we go. And so we've taken a circle, and we've basically gotten it to this point just by transforming it. Let's say Command Z. Actually, if you want to get out of your transform, if you want to apply the transform, hit this checkbox up there or Enter. If you want to get out of it, just hit the Escape key, and it'll go back to where it was. So any transform that you do will not be applied until you hit Enter or that checkbox up there. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Like we didn't really do anything useful with it just yet, but it's a good way to kind of play around with things at this point. We're going to be doing more useful things later. I'm going to show you a little bit more complex. So we're going to hit Command T again, and now I'm going to show you guys some really cool things you can do. You can right click within your selection. So within this boundary here, right click, and then you can see things like scale, rotate, skew, distort, perspective, warp. You can rotate this 180 degrees. You can rotate it. You can flip horizontal and vertical as well, which is really cool. Let's just jump into something like perspective. If you click on perspective and then click one of these corners, what it's going to do is it's going to allow you to like force this into a perspective. So if you were like trying to make it look like it was on a wall or something like that, you could do that and bring it in perspective this way as well. Let's hit escape here. Hit Command T again. And this time, I'm not going to right click at all. I'm just going to hold down the Control or the Command key, and I can click on any one of these points here now, and I can really start to transform this circle however I want to. So I'm doing this with a circle, but you can do this with anything that's on a layer. You could do this with a person's face if you wanted to. It just has to be on a layer. So you can see I'm transforming it quite a bit, just holding down the Control or the Command key now. Very cool. Let's hit escape again. Now I'm going to hit Command T again, just showing you some options. You wouldn't necessarily do this over and over again. Right click, and we're going to go to warp. Warp just allows you to kind of like click and kind of like, you know, warp it into some interesting shapes there. And when you're done, let's just say we want to hit enter there. So now we've got that. What was a circle? We just turned into that. Undo, by the way, is Option Command Z. That will step backwards in time. And that's really helpful because we don't always want to do what we just did. All right, so that's our transform. Now, another cool thing you can do, let's just, let's command click these two guys. With the move tool is your alignment, and that's what's going on up here. So if I hold down shift and click on two layers, our alignment tools will now highlight, which will allow us to actually align these up. So if we wanted to, let's say we want them both to be aligned on the left edge, you can click on this icon right here. And if you basically hold your, remember that tooltips dialog in the intro? If you just, you know, hold your cursor over basically any tool in Photoshop, it'll tell you what it does. So align left edges. Let's go ahead and click on there. And it's going to take the leftmost edge and align it. All right, let's just try moving this one around. Shift click on those, and then we'll go to align right edge, and it's going to pop this one along to where it aligns on the right. Okay, pretty cool. Now if you want to align it on the center, let's just change our size here so it actually makes sense. Command click on those again, align them in the center. They're going to be aligned in the center. So on the right, on the left, on the center. You can also do the same thing with your horizontal and vertical axis. So on the top, center, and bottom there. Now, if you click center here and center there, they're both going to be centered within each other, which is kind of cool. I can't see them because they're the same color and they're in the exact center, but that's basically it. Yeah. If I want to, let's just make this color a little bit darker. I'm going to click on this layer and hit Command I, which is just going to make it darker. Okay. And you can see it's above this other layer. So layers work like sheets of paper. If it's above this layer, you can bring it down below, and it's going to be down below. But we're going to play around with layers in just a little bit. So I'm going to shift click those two layers, and you can align them on the right. Sorry, that was the center. It'll go on the right and on the bottom, just like that. Or center, center. And now this guy's in the exact center of the other one, which is pretty helpful. You don't have to like guess. You don't have to be like, oh, that looks right. You just actually do that. Okay. So that's using the move tool, basically transforming things around. You can continue to hit Command T and stretch things around. Let's shift click there and see what that looks like. We've created the Oprah O. That actually does look a lot like it. It's kind of funny. Total accident, by the way. So really cool things. You can transform things around. You can move, you can rotate, and you can also align all within the move tool here. And very, very helpful. Okay, the next tool we're going to look at is our lasso tool. We've got a couple of selections here. Lasso tool, polygonal lasso tool, and magnetic lasso tool. You'll also notice keyboard shortcuts appear to the right of these tools. So L is going to be the lasso tool. Now, if you hold down the shift key and hit L a few times, it's going to cycle through all those tools that are nested within each other. All right. And the lasso tool is just another way to make selections. Just like the traditional marquee tool that we covered here, lasso tool just makes selections. So if I want to create a new layer and I want to make a selection around that, I can do that. And then I could use my brush tool and fill that within. I could do that as well. Now we have a not as beautiful shape there. Let's just go back in time by hitting Option Command Z. There we go. So we can make a selection. If you want to do like a rough job cutting someone out, this is like a, you know, a decent tool to do that. You could just cut someone out and then use a layer mask, which we'll get to soon. All right, Command D will deselect that. So this is not a very accurate tool, as you might guess, because it's hard to just do something perfectly. But if you want to do something quick, it's not a bad option. Next, we have Polygonal Lasso tool, and basically when you click on this tool, it's just going to create shapes around someone, and these are going to be straight lines. Okay, so we'll just go right around our person, hold down the spacebar key, move down, select around our person. There we go. And as we come back to the beginning, we are going to see a little O right there, and that's going to close out our selection and complete it. Pretty cool. Let's deselect. Now there are a couple tricks. If you are making a polygonal selection and now I want to turn it into a regular lasso tool, just hold down the shift key. Nope, it's the alt key or option, and it'll turn into the regular lasso tool, and then I'll let go of it and it's going to turn back into the polygonal. So you can do two tools within one, and it works the same way with the other one as well. The lasso tool, if you're doing this and you hold down alt or option, let go of your cursor, it'll turn in back into this, and then you can access both tools within the same selection process just by holding down the alt or the option tool, which is very nice. Also, if you want to add to your selection, same as before, hold down the shift key and you can add to your selections just like this. Hold down the alt or the option and you can subtract from these areas too. Okay, just the same like this other tool. So it's making selections, it's just making it a little bit different. Now the magnetic lasso tool is kind of cool because this will actually follow an edge. Let's try to get it to follow the edge of Lauren's leg here, because why not? So we're going to go to our magnetic lasso tool, and I'm going to click here on the edge, and I'm not letting, I've let go. I'm not clicking over and over again, but it's finding the edge, and it's trying to like stay as close to the edge as it possibly can. All right, and you can see it's doing a decent job. When it gets down here in like the darks and stuff like that, it's going to get more confused. But when you have like a pretty well-defined edge, see like this isn't as well-defined. When you have a well-defined edge, it's going to do pretty well. You know, other places, not as well. But like around your arm, should do quite well. Well, not as well as I thought I would use. It basically looks for contrast. So let's just hit escape key. So this is obviously like a very stark contrast, a light leg next to a dark background. So click there, and there we go. So cutting a person out like that is usually a good one. You can hit the delete key to go backwards in time, by the way. Like go backwards if you do something like this and you're like, oh no, I didn't like that. Just hit the delete key a couple times. It's going to delete those last couple of little nodes you made. All right, and then you can just bring that back around. I don't use this tool too much. It's not bad, but it's not the best tool for cutting people out. So I only like the best. Basically is what I'm trying to say here. All right. The next we're going to get to the Magic Wand tool and the Quick Selection tool. Again, kind of similar. I don't use the Quick Selection tool. This is like, you know, for selecting out, like you just click and drag like, oh, I want to select out this red dress. Again, in my opinion, it's not usually the best tool for doing something like this. So I don't really use the Quick Selection tool. Magic Wand tool, on the other hand, I use quite a bit because you can select areas based on how similar they are to wherever you click. The lower your tolerance you come down, you can bring your point sample will take like the actual like exact place that you click. 3x3 average will just make it like similar to like, you know, like similar to where you're clicking. It'll just average 3x3 pixels. So you can see like wherever I'm clicking, it's selecting colors that are similar to where I click. You know, here on her leg, this one's probably going to do pretty well. That's an O, and then the inside of the O, there are the highlights of her face and things like that. So similar. The higher you bring your tolerance up, the more it's going to select. So let's bring our tolerance up even more. And it's going to start to select a lot of stuff, you know, almost all of her skin, things like that. Still not the best tool to cut people out most of the time, but you can see how it can be helpful some of the time. There we go. So let's just click there. We'll bring our tolerance a little bit lower. All right. So we can just see selecting out parts of her dress there. Cool. There are a couple options. You can choose to have this sample all the layers. If you uncheck that, it's just going to sample whatever's on this layer. In this case, this layer only has that, so it's only going to let me select this. This layer has the O on it, so it's going to let me select the O. Usually I keep sample all layers, so we can just you don't have to think about it. The other option is checking contiguous is going to make sure that it's not going to like jump to another part of your image, and select that as well. If you uncheck that, we can select our dress here, and it's going to select everything that's a similar color through our entire image, even if it's way up there. Let's bring our tolerance down, and maybe we can select a highlight inner dress. Okay, so you can see it's selected down here, which is similar to color up there, even though they're not connected. And the same thing up there too. Maybe it got her toenail a little bit too. And then her skin tone here. Selected all the similar skin tones there in her body as well. Some of her hair too. So usually I keep that selected, but sometimes it's helpful to not keep it selected. All right. The next tool we're going to look at is our crop tool. So you can hit C for the crop tool if you want to do that. And there's some great options to be had within the crop tool. You can click and move this around. This is, they've improved the crop tool with like CS6, in my opinion. But if you guys are using something older, it's going to look a little bit different, but basically it does the same thing. One thing I would make sure to pay attention to is this delete crop pixels. Don't check that. Because if you do, if I crop this image in and I decide I want back the information that's outside of this, I can never get it back. It's gone. So I want to make sure that I do not select that. Basically, so you just crop however you want to. There we go, and hit enter, and there we go. Now our image is cropped in just to our subject. I'm gonna hit Option Command Z, which is just gonna undo that. All right, there are a lot of really cool. Let's make those layers invisible. There are a lot of really cool things that you can do with the crop tool. You can get a specific ratio if you want, like a 5:7. This is really nice if you guys are ordering prints online and you want like an exact ratio. You can be like, you know, because a lot of companies have image uploaders that will automatically size or crop your image for you. But if you're like me and you don't want that, you want control, you can do it yourself. Or hey, I want a 5:7, so let's make it a 5:7 horizontal. There we go. Looks pretty cool. Yep, and now we have a nice 5:7. So you can do all kinds of things like that, paper sizes and whatnot. Or hit this clear button, and then you can just do whatever you'd like. Okay, you can also change the angle of your crop. Like you can, this is to grab a horizon. Like if this was a horizon, I could do that, and it would straighten that out. Hit escape because that's not a horizon. And that'll straighten that out. Let's just crop there. And we have some grid options. We can choose a small grid here. We can choose a diagonal grid. We can choose a couple of other things. A golden spiral, which is kind of cool here. Let's see. So we can see like the golden spiral. Like, is there a golden spiral within this image? Can we get the reverse? No. I wanted to just look at her face. The golden spiral is basically like, you know, crop an image so you have like information here that leads down to your subject. If I wanted to look right here at my subject's waist, that might be a good one because we've got a tree line that comes right over here. We're looking down here and then go to your subject waist. But it's generally a no-no to cut your subject's legs off like that, so we won't do that. But, you know, maybe that could be a good crop. You never know. These are just things to help you out here. I typically use rule of thirds. All right. You can have it on or off. Here in your tools, you can use classic mode, which would be like what you guys would have if you're using like CS3 or something. Show the cropped area. Yep, I checked that. Enable the crop shield, which is basically like doesn't show you the things you decided to cross out. And by default, this opacity is, you know, probably something like that. I usually just turn it to 100 because I don't need to see all that other stuff. And then the color, you can just have it match the canvas. So that's how I like to keep my crop tool checked. That's how I crop. But I'm sure you guys have your own options and things like that. We're going to hit escape because we don't need a crop right now, but that's how you use the tool. All right, let's turn that layer back on. And then we have our eyedropper tool and a couple of other tools. The eyedropper tool basically samples the color that you want to eyedrop. Okay, so it's going to sample this color. You can choose your sample size to be a point sample, which is just like the exact pixel you click on. I don't recommend that usually because you get a lot of variation between like light and dark pixels. I would recommend like a 3x3 average. That's usually pretty good, or even a 5x5 average if you're working on a very large image. And you can see my colors, my color on the top is like it's changing more smoothly. And then if we just do a point sample, it's like it's kind of spazzing out on us, right? So a 3x3 or 5x5 average usually works out pretty well. You can choose all layers, the current layer, and things like that. Same type of options you're going to be getting with other tools. Now, within this 3D, we're not going to be measuring with that. The color sampler tool, I really don't ever use that. It's basically you just click a couple points, brings up your info, and then tells you about the points that you click. You can use this to compare relative values. Sometimes it's useful in like very high-end retouching, but it's very past Photoshop 101. All right, to get rid of that, hold down the Alt or the Option key and click on your little points there. Cut them out. All right, the ruler tool you can use to measure things based on your units and measurements that you defined in your preferences, which we talked about earlier. All right, again, I don't really use this tool. It's not as helpful for photo editing, the ruler tool and things like this. The note tool, if you guys were passing this on to a client or a retoucher and things like that, it's not a bad idea to put a note somewhere. You can just put a note there and then type in like her face, just in case you didn't know what that was. And then the next person who opens this tool, opens up Photoshop, can click there and say like, you know, oh, what's that? Her face? Oh, that's her face? Cool. Yeah, really helpful, right? Let's just delete that note. Yes. Okay. Don't use that either. And a 1, 2, 3 count tool? Well, this might actually be helpful sometimes, but I've never used this either, so I hope I can get these to be, yeah, hit this clear button to get them away. 1 eye, 2 eye, 1 mouth. I don't know how you would use this. It's just, kids might like that tool. Okay. Sorry. Just tools that I don't use. All right, eyedropper tool is pretty helpful. I rarely actually click on the eyedropper tool because if you're in the brush tool, which we're going to get to next, you can hold down the Alt or the Option key while you're in the brush tool, and that'll just become the eyedropper tool. So it's like 2 tools in 1, and efficiency is just really great. So it's nice to be able to do that. And that's the end of our first section, as well as kind of the introduction and going through these options up there. All right, we're going to end this, and then we're going to pick up with part 2, where we're going to cover tools section part 2.